Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning, and today we've got another really interesting combination to try, and I'm really curious to see how it performs because I kind of think it could go either way with this. We might see a really nice looking pattern, but we could see a really disappointing pattern at the same time. We're just going to have to see if these shells can actually perform like they're supposed to through this kind of old school, pretty basic bare bones type of setup. But for the shell we've got out here today, I brought out some more of the Winchester Longbeard XR loads. These ones are the 12 gauge 3-inch 1 7/8 ounce payload of number 6s, moving about 1,050 feet per second. So we know that these are some very good performing shells, and we've had no quality control issues with this box at all. So we should see a very good performance out of these shells. It just depends on how well they're going to do through today's setup. And as for that setup, I brought out this old guy. This is an old Mossberg 500A, but it has a 30-inch fixed full choke barrel on it. And for those curious, I did actually measure the constriction of this full choke, and it comes out to be right at a 695. So pretty typical full choke type of range, but sometimes these older, really long fixed full choke barrels can have a little more or a little less constriction than you might like. This one though is right in that typical full choke range. Now the big question here today is, yes, that is an old school fixed full choke barrel. Can it perform well with today's modern turkey loads? We've tested a couple turkey shells through it now with some surprisingly good looking results, to be honest with you, and we've tested it with Longbeard 4s, and that gave us a really impressive pattern, all things considered. But I think today these are 6s, so it could kind of go either way. We could see a nice uniform even pattern with a lot more shot condensed down into that area, or with them being smaller pellets, we could see a whole lot more sporadicness in the pattern as well, since we don't have a ton of constriction here to work with like a turkey choke would. So I guess we'll have to see what happens with this combination. But as for today's test, everything is the same as usual. The turkey target is set up at 40 yards. I also have the chronograph so we can get our velocity out of those shells through that big 30-inch barrel. So let's get you guys to view the target and take this shot and just see, can the Longbeard 6s perform really well through an old school setup like this with a fixed choke? I don't know what we're going to see necessarily, but let's go over here and take the shot and see what we get. Okay, so that shell gave us 1105 through the chrono. The box claim is 1050. I do apologize for the battery light blinking, but either way, that is very typical for what we see out of these shells. We do have a longer 30-inch barrel, and even out of my 28-inch on the 1187, we see up in the 1100s. So very normal velocities for what I would expect to see. But what kind of a pattern did we actually get? Let's go down and check it out and see what we got. All right, now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. And yeah, we absolutely have a dead bird here all day long. There's like 3 of them through the brain and several more of them down through the spine. So yeah, you would have absolutely gotten that bird. Now our pattern might be just a touch off to the right, but still, as we can see here, it's not your typical super tight, super hot Longbeard looking pattern necessarily, but it's definitely not bad at all things considered here. That is a 695 constriction, fixed full choke barrel in a 35 or 40-year-old Mossberg, and that is still more than good enough of a turkey pattern out to 40-45 yards all day long. It's definitely more on the broad and more on the open side than what you would see out of these shells through a turkey choke. But hey, if that's the setup you had, or you wanted to hunt with something old school like that, these Longbeard 6s would absolutely do it in a setup like that. Now I definitely think the general, say 12 inches or so in the middle of our pattern is a little bit hotter with shot than the outer parts of the pattern, but we still don't necessarily have a really tight, defined hot core area. It's not perfect throughout the pattern. There are a bunch of little like golf ball sized voids and stuff throughout there. There's one right above his head up there near the words on the paper, and another one just up above his beard there on the papers. So it's not perfectly even necessarily. And around the edges, we definitely have a couple flyers like over there, and just around the extreme edges, we definitely have a little bit of sporadicness, but that is kind of to be expected with not only lead 6s, but a setup like this, a fixed full choke barrel. I don't think we can really complain too much about that pattern. Sure, it might not be anything compared to a modern, TSS load through a tight turkey choke or anything like that, but for a basic turkey hunting setup, that's going to work for you right there. It's not completely blown all over the place. It is a little more broad, but you still have a plenty condensed enough pattern to get the job done all day long on a turkey out to 40 or 45 yards. Absolutely. So I'd say not looking too bad here today, all things considered. considered, I would not be scared to hunt with that pattern if that's what I had to work with. So once again, the old fixed full choke barrel and the Longbeard shells gave us a plenty usable enough turkey pattern. I don't think we can really complain too much about this setup or combination or how it performed today, that's for sure. Okay, and here's the wad from that shell, and it is just your typical Longbeard wad. There's nothing stuck down in there. We did have one or two petals open up slightly farther than the rest, but it's still within realm of reason. Obviously, they couldn't snag on anything or anything like that, so we're all good to go there. No rips or tears or anything. It looks very much normal for these, so I think it did about as good of a job as what it could have done through this very basic old school setup today. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that performance right there? Is it anything amazing compared to a modern tight turkey choke with a TSS load or something like that? No, but that is still a pattern that you could confidently take out into the woods and hunt turkeys with all day long. It might not have the hottest core. It might not be the tightest pattern. It might not be the most perfectly even pattern, but that's a turkey hunting pattern right there. It's going to get the job done for you. So with an old school setup like that, with a load of lead sixes, I don't think we can really complain too much about that performance. So all things considered today, I think we're looking pretty good for what this setup and combination actually is. But as always, leave your thoughts down in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested a combination like this, or have an old fixed full choke barrel or something and tried the Longbeards through it? Or would you hunt with a pattern like that? If so, let me know all that stuff down below, as well as maybe what other shells might you want to see through that old fixed full choke Mossberg, because I definitely want to test a few more and see what kind of results we can get. But with that being said, I've got plenty more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description down below if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.